Hi Reddit, I'm 30 and I've got a story that still makes my stomach turn every time I think about it. 2 years ago, I was pregnant, finally. After years of fertility treatments, disappointments, and one heartbreaking miscarriage, my husband and I were cautiously optimistic. Everything had gone smoothly this time. The first trimester came and went, and we let ourselves get excited. We picked out names. We bought a crib. We painted the nursery light blue. I still remember standing in the middle of that little room, watching my husband assemble the crib, thinking, this is really happening. My younger sister, Kayla, had been by my side through it all. She's 27, and we've always been close in that complicated, not always easy kind of way. She's loud, impulsive, and used to being the center of attention. But she'd been weirdly supportive during this pregnancy. Always offering to run errands, coming by with prenatal vitamins or soup or some new pregnancy gadget I'd never heard of. It felt nice, honestly. Like she was finally growing up. Everything changed at 33 weeks. One morning, I woke up in pain, sharp, wrenching pain. I was rushed to the hospital, and for a few terrifying hours, no one could tell me what was happening. Eventually, they told us I'd gone into early labor and there were complications. I remember the chaos. I remember being told they had to perform an emergency C-section. And then, nothing. Just blackness. When I came to, my husband was sitting next to my bed, holding my hand. His eyes were red. He told me the baby hadn't made it. I don't think I really heard him the first time. My brain just wouldn't accept it. I'd had a name. A tiny blue onesie folded on top of the dresser. I'd felt him kick. And now he was gone. I spiraled. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even stand to be in the same room as the nursery. We packed everything away in silence. I told my husband I didn't want to see anyone. Not even Kayla. But she showed up anyway. Flowers. Cards. Hugs I didn't want. She kept talking about how strong I was, how I'd try again, how it just wasn't meant to be. I know she meant well. But every time she said his name, my son's name, it felt like I was being stabbed in the chest. Then she stopped coming by. No warning. No calls. Just gone. For almost 4 months, I didn't hear a word from her. And then, out of nowhere, she showed up again, with a baby. A baby boy. She said she'd adopted. Said it was a private adoption. That the birth mother had chosen her last minute. I didn't know what to say. I was still barely holding myself together, and now here she was, smiling and glowing with this newborn in her arms. I told myself I was being paranoid. That life was unfair, yes, but it wouldn't be that cruel. I told myself that a coincidence, however painful, wasn't proof of anything. But then I looked at the baby. And something in me knew. He looked just like the ultrasound photos I'd saved on my phone. And I swear to God, I felt him recognize me. I couldn't stop staring at the baby in Kayla's arms. It was like my heart had started racing and shutting down at the same time. My brain was trying to rationalize it. Newborns all kind of look the same, right? But my gut was screaming something different. His nose, his chin, even his ears. He looked like me. Like my husband. I smiled through clenched teeth. I told her he was beautiful. She beamed like she'd just won the lottery. Said she named him Eli. That was the final punch in the gut. Eli was the middle name we had picked for our son. I hadn't told anyone. Not even my parents. We were going to surprise everyone after the birth. So how the hell did she know? I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything in my head. I pulled out the ultrasound photos and stared at them until my eyes burned. Then I did something I still feel weird about. I dug through Kayla's social media. She'd wiped everything clean. No pregnancy pictures. No new mom updates. Just a few generic baby posts, always from angles where you could barely see his face. Something was wrong. I knew it. I just didn't know how to prove it. Over the next few weeks, she kept popping up. Unannounced visits, texts with baby pictures, messages that felt less like a sister checking in and more like someone showing off. My husband was trying to be neutral about it, but even he was getting suspicious. One day, after Kayla left, he finally said it. That kid, he looks exactly like my baby pictures. So I asked Kayla point blank if I could see the adoption paperwork. She laughed like I was joking. Brushed it off. Said it was confidential. I told her I wasn't accusing her of anything. I just wanted peace of mind. She got defensive. Said I needed therapy, not answers. That I was obsessed and projecting and needed to move on. That's when I knew something wasn't just off. Something was very, very wrong. The next week, I visited the hospital. The same one where I gave birth. I didn't expect them to tell me much, but I had to try. I asked to speak to someone from records, hoping they'd at least confirm the date and details of my procedure. Instead, I got blank stares. The nurse I spoke to looked confused and told me, "You never delivered here." I thought I'd misheard. I insisted I had. I remembered it. The pain, the fear, the surgery, the grief. But she double-checked. There was no record of a C-section. No record of a birth. According to their system, I'd come in for early contractions and was discharged the same day with a false labor diagnosis. That's when my hands started to shake. Because now, I didn't just feel crazy. Now I had proof that someone was lying. I walked out of that hospital in a daze, clutching a piece of paper that said I'd never given birth. It was surreal. Like my reality had been rewritten and everyone forgot to tell me. I remember sitting in my car, staring at the steering wheel for 20 minutes, not even crying, just blank. My body remembered the pain. The surgery scar was there. But the paperwork said otherwise. I called my husband, told him everything. He went quiet for a moment, then said the one thing I hadn't dared say out loud: "What if you didn't lose the baby?" The thought hit me like a tidal wave. What if there was no miscarriage? What if something happened during the birth and no? That was impossible, right? But then I remembered something from those first few blurry hours at the hospital. A conversation I only half heard while coming out of anesthesia. A nurse saying something about temporary custody arrangements. I'd chalked it up to my delirium. Maybe it wasn't. That night, my husband and I sat down with everything we had: pictures, texts, even the hospital discharge form. We made a list of people to talk to. I called my OB the next day, pretending I was requesting documents for insurance reasons. She was hesitant, but eventually sent over a partial medical report. And buried deep in the file was a single chilling line under delivery notes. Neonatal transfer, custody assignment signed. Custody assignment? We'd never signed anything. I called her office again, demanding answers. The receptionist wouldn't tell me anything, said I needed a lawyer. A lawyer? Why would I need a lawyer just to find out what happened to my own child? My husband called his cousin, who's a paralegal. She took one look at the paperwork and told us flat out, this wasn't normal. Especially not the missing hospital record. She offered to help us dig deeper, and within 48 hours, we had a contact inside the hospital's legal department willing to talk unofficially. What he said chilled me to my bones. There was a birth that night. A premature baby boy. Transferred to a neonatal facility 2 towns over. Mother listed as unidentified surrogate. The name used on the paperwork? Kayla's. I couldn't breathe. My sister had stolen my baby. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Kayla since the adoption. Every smile. Every baby photo she sent. Every time she let me hold him, for only a few seconds, like she was dangling something in front of me I could never fully have. My mind kept going back to the surgery scar on my body. The emptiness I felt when I woke up. The way Kayla suddenly vanished for months, only to reappear with a baby who looked just like my husband. It was all there. Right in front of me. I just hadn't let myself see it. The next morning, I met with a family law attorney. I brought everything. The photos, the documents, the names. I was shaking the whole time. I didn't even care about being calm or rational anymore. I just wanted the truth out. I wanted my son back. The attorney was cautious but kind. He told me that if what I was saying could be proven, that I had given birth and someone else fraudulently took custody, we had a legal case. A massive one. But the hardest part was ahead, establishing paternity and maternity without tipping Kayla off. Because if she found out we were investigating her, she could vanish. With my son. That possibility nearly broke me. The lawyer immediately filed a motion to unseal the hospital records, and in the meantime, we were told to play it cool. To act like nothing was wrong. Like I still believed her adoption story. That was the hardest part. I had to smile at her, hold her baby, my baby, and pretend I wasn't silently screaming every second. My husband played along too. He even complimented her nursery, her parenting instincts, her bravery. It felt like we were in a twisted play, pretending to admire the performance of a woman who stole our child. Then, one afternoon, I noticed something strange. Kayla left her diaper bag on the kitchen counter during a visit. While she stepped into the bathroom, I instinctively opened it to grab a pacifier that had fallen out. Inside the side pocket, tucked in with a bottle and a receipt, was a small envelope. Inside was a hospital bracelet. One of those tiny ones they put on newborns. And it had my last name on it. Not Kayla's. Mine. I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. I snapped a photo with my phone and carefully slid the bracelet back in like nothing had happened. That was it. The final crack in the lie. I emailed the photo to our lawyer that night. He didn't even wait until the next morning. He filed an emergency request to petition the court for a DNA test. We were officially at war. And Kayla still had no idea. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. While our lawyer filed the necessary paperwork, my husband and I had to keep pretending everything was normal. We smiled through clenched teeth, went along with Kayla's visits, and said all the right things even when they made my blood boil. She started getting more possessive, less generous. She wouldn't let me hold the baby as long. Claimed he was fussy. Claimed he was teething, or tired, or just wasn't a cuddler. But I knew the truth. She felt it. She could tell something was shifting. The way I looked at him had changed. The way I looked at her had changed. And I think that's when she started to panic. Because 3 days after we submitted the emergency request for a court-ordered DNA test, before we even got a court date, Kayla ghosted me. No calls. No texts. Her social media went private. When I drove by her place, it was empty. Curtains drawn. No car in the driveway. She was gone. I wanted to scream. Our lawyer told us not to freak out yet. That it could just be coincidence. That she might not know what we were doing. But I could feel it, like something had cracked open. She knew. So we did what we had to. We filed a missing child report. I didn't care that Kayla was my sister. I didn't care that it would explode the family. I didn't even care how it would look. A piece of me had been stolen, and now that piece had vanished into thin air. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The police were reluctant at first. After all, she was listed as the adoptive parent. But when they dug into the hospital records and found the forged consent forms, the non-existent adoption agency, and the bracelet photo I'd submitted as evidence, everything changed. Suddenly, it wasn't a family squabble anymore. It was a criminal investigation. Fraud. Custody interference. Medical identity theft. And then, finally, the break we needed. Kayla had used her credit card at a small roadside motel about 2 hours away. By the time authorities got there, she was gone, but security footage confirmed she'd been there with a baby. For 2 nights. She'd paid in cash for the rest of the stay. The clerk remembered her because she'd seemed nervous and kept the baby swaddled the entire time, even in 80-degree weather. We were terrified she was going to run. Or worse, do something unthinkable. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I was jumping every time my phone buzzed. Every second that passed, I imagined the worst. Until one afternoon, just before sunset, my husband's phone rang. It was Kayla. And what she said made my blood run cold. Her voice was shaking. Not with fear. Not with guilt. With rage. She accused us of destroying her life. Said we had betrayed her by involving the police. That we were trying to take away the only good thing she ever had. I just stood there, listening in stunned silence while my husband held the phone on speaker. She said she deserved to be a mother. That I already had everything, a husband, a house, a life. And her? She'd never had any of it. Not love. Not stability. Not a future. Just loneliness and mistakes. She said I owed her this. That this baby had healed her. That she loved him like he was her own. And then, through gritted teeth, she said the words I'll never forget. I saved him from you. My knees buckled. She said she'd overheard our parents talking after I was rushed into surgery. How they were worried I couldn't handle a premature birth. How they thought I was too emotionally fragile. That I might relapse into depression or neglect him. And Kayla, in all her twisted logic, decided she had to step in. Not because anyone asked her to. Because she believed she was better for him. She forged the documents. Bribed a nurse, who has since been fired and is now under investigation, to falsify the hospital record. Claimed I had abandoned the baby after birth. And in the chaos, no one questioned it. A vulnerable woman sedated after surgery, a supposedly willing surrogate signing over custody to a responsible family member. It was a loophole. A moment of silence in the system. And she walked right through it. I don't even remember the rest of that call. I just know that when she finally hung up, we stood in the kitchen for what felt like hours, stunned. Numb. My husband sat down, head in his hands, and said, "She's not just sick. She's dangerous." We gave the police the number she called from. They traced it to a burner phone. But the signal pinged a nearby cell tower, just a few towns over. For the first time, we had a trail. 2 days later, Kayla was found in a rental cabin outside a small lake community. When the police knocked on the door, she tried to escape through the back. She was holding the baby. Wrapped in 3 layers of blankets despite the heat. He was crying. My son. My baby boy. When the officer gently took him from her arms, she didn't fight. She just sat down on the porch, sobbing. Kept repeating over and over, he was supposed to be mine. The moment I got the call, I dropped everything and ran to that precinct. And when they placed him in my arms for the first time since the hospital, I knew. I knew in my bones, in my blood, in every cell of my body. He was mine. Holding him was like waking up from a nightmare I didn't know I'd been trapped in for months. He looked up at me with those big, quiet eyes, curious, blinking slowly like he was trying to figure out who I was. But I knew. I knew the shape of his face, the softness of his cheeks, the little wrinkle in his forehead that matched my husband's exactly when he slept. The officer stayed close, gently reminding me they still needed confirmation, DNA testing, formal hearings, protective services protocols, but I could barely hear her. All I could do was rock him against my chest and whisper over and over, "You're safe now. I've got you. Mama's here." My husband arrived moments later. When he walked into that room and saw me holding our son, something in him just broke. I'd never seen him cry like that. He sank to his knees next to me, kissed our son's tiny fingers, and said through tears, "We're never letting you go again." That was the moment everything changed. We stayed at the station for hours that night, giving statements, handing over every bit of evidence we'd gathered. The officers were kind, but even they looked shaken. One of them quietly told me, "In all my years, I've never seen anything like this." Kayla was arrested on the spot. She didn't resist. No outburst. No apology. Just this eerie, distant look on her face, like she still believed what she did made sense. When she passed by us, cuffed, she didn't even look at me. Just whispered, almost like a prayer, "You'll never love him like I do." They're charging her with multiple felonies, fraud, kidnapping, falsifying medical documents, obstruction, and unlawful custody interference. The nurse who helped her is also facing charges. The next 48 hours were a blur. We were granted emergency custody, and our son was officially listed under our legal names. The court fast-tracked the DNA test, which, of course, confirmed what we already knew. He was ours. He had always been ours. But as the dust started to settle, the part that really hit me hardest wasn't just what Kayla had done. It was the fallout from everyone else. Because once the truth came out, not everyone was on my side. I thought when the truth came out, it would be over. I thought people would be horrified. That everyone would rally behind us. But life isn't that simple, and neither is family. My parents were devastated. But not in the way I expected. Instead of being angry at Kayla, my mom broke down sobbing, not for me, but for her. She said Kayla had always been fragile, that she'd never recovered from a breakup years ago, that she was just lonely and desperate to matter to someone. I stared at her, stunned. She said the words, "She didn't mean to hurt you." I didn't even know how to respond. My dad tried to play the middle, like this was a disagreement that could be worked out over a dinner table. "This doesn't mean she's a bad person," he said. "She needs help, not punishment." Help? She stole my child. She forged medical documents, paid off hospital staff, and disappeared with my newborn for months. And yet somehow, they still wanted me to be the one to understand. Worse, some extended relatives started questioning our version of the story, asking why we hadn't noticed sooner. If maybe there was some agreement Kayla thought she had. If maybe I had said something in the hospital that she misunderstood. As if I was even conscious. The narrative started twisting before my eyes. In hushed conversations. In vague texts. In pitying looks from family members who wanted to support both sides. Even some people online, after a few leaked details hit local news, started speculating. Saying I must have been unfit. That mothers don't just lose their babies like that unless something else was going on. I started feeling it again. That heavy, suffocating fog I'd worked so hard to crawl out of. But this time, I wasn't alone. Because my husband was furious. Our lawyer was relentless. And a surprising voice came forward from the chaos, my cousin Nia. She posted a long, public message on Facebook with every detail of the case. She shared my son's name. My hospital records. A screenshot of Kayla's burner profile where she'd posted photos pretending to be a surrogate for a struggling couple. Mia called it what it was, a premeditated abduction. And slowly, people started listening. But the damage had already been done in some places. The people who wanted to believe Kayla was just a lost soul, they still believe it. And honestly, I don't care anymore. Because I had my son in my arms. And no one was taking him from me again. The legal process moved fast, at least by court standards. Because of the nature of the case and the clear evidence of fraud, the judge granted us full and immediate parental custody. My son's birth certificate was corrected, hospital records amended, and Kayla was issued a no-contact order. Permanently. But even with the courts on our side, it didn't feel like a win. The first few weeks home with our baby were complicated. He cried a lot. He didn't sleep well. Loud noises startled him. The pediatrician told us what we already feared: he'd been overstimulated. Moved around too much. Exposed to a lot of stress in his first few months. He was healthy, but anxious. Like he'd been holding his little breath in the world too long. I spent hours just rocking him, humming softly, letting him grip my finger like it was the only solid thing he had. He didn't smile much at first, but one day, almost 5 weeks after we brought him home, he laughed. Not a big laugh, just a tiny, breathy chuckle while my husband made faces at him. And I broke down crying. Because that was the first moment I felt like he knew. He knew he was safe now. That laugh shattered something in me and rebuilt it at the same time. But healing didn't stop there. Every morning I'd open his curtains and whisper, "Good morning, sunshine," like I had imagined doing during my pregnancy. I started reading to him from the same baby books that had once made me sob with grief. We took our first walk as a family, me, my husband, our baby, and people smiled at us like we were any other parents. They had no idea how hard we'd fought just to reach that sidewalk. But beneath the surface, part of me was still waiting for the next earthquake. I checked the locks twice at night. I peeked through the window at random shadows. I kept expecting Kayla to show up again somehow, to take back what she believed was hers. But she didn't. She stayed locked up, denied bail while awaiting trial. Until a letter came. From jail. From Kayla. The envelope was thin. No return address, just her name scribbled across the top in handwriting I'd seen on birthday cards growing up. That same looping K she always made like a little crown. My hands shook as I opened it, unsure what I was hoping for. An apology? A confession? A final jab? It was none of those things. Just one page. She wrote that she hoped I was taking good care of him. That she could still feel his weight in her arms. That every night she dreamed of feeding him, rocking him to sleep, singing songs she said I would have never known how to sing. She said I should be grateful, because she'd loved him when I couldn't. That she was the one who held him when he cried. That she gave him his first smile. And then, right at the bottom, one last line. He called me Mama first, not you. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a wound she'd saved just for me. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I folded the letter, placed it in a box I keep locked, and told no one, not even my husband. Because that letter wasn't about her. It was about me. About who I would choose to be moving forward. And I chose this. To never let that darkness live in my house again. She'll be sentenced soon. Our lawyer says she'll likely serve a long time, especially with the falsified documents and conspiracy charges stacking up. And as for the nurse, she cut a deal. Gave up details in exchange for a reduced sentence. I don't care what happens to her. I care about him. Our son just turned 1 last week. We threw a small party. Nothing fancy, just balloons, cupcakes, and family we trust. I held him while we sang happy birthday, kissed his cheek, and whispered the words I'd wanted to say since the day he was born. I will never let you go. He didn't call me Mama that day. But a week later, out of nowhere, while reaching up for me in the hallway, he did. Soft and clear as day. Mama. And I knew. It didn't matter what she'd taken. Because I was the one who brought him home. And I'm the one who gets to love him every day of his life. That's all that matters now.